Hi, everybody. Adrian Fontes here. Did you know that the Democrats of Greater Tucson has a website, thedgt.org, and if you subscribe, it's only 20 bucks. You can support this great weekly communication where folks get together. Sometimes there's candidates, sometimes folks like me pop on to help understand what's going on in the world. The Democrats of Greater Tucson, thedgt.org. Join up today.
We have a wonderful guest today. She's been here before, and that's Shelly Burgoyne. She has been the Pima County Democratic Party Executive Director for 3 years. A very eventful 3 years, wouldn't you say, Shelly?
Yeah, definitely.
And we're so glad you're here. And, you can take as much time as you want, as long as we have time for questions and answers. And I'm sure we'll have some great questions. So
Yeah.
let's give Shelly Burgoyne a very warm welcome for being here with us today.
Hi there. Hi, welcome. I know most of you, but some of you I don't know. So I'm glad to be here, and nice to meet you. I'd like to meet you in person. That would be great. I've been the executive director for 2 years. I was the comms director before that, and did social media before that, and was a volunteer at the old headquarters before that. So I've been around a minute. Looking forward to doing some more, different stuff, but it's been pretty fantastic, and I've learned so much about our community and about electing Democrats. To that point, I know that the national results were pretty devastating, and many of us are still trying to process that and figure out what our literally some of us our lives are going to look like under this new leadership. But all we can do as the Pima County Democratic Party is focus on Pima County, right? We just really need to make sure every cycle that we're focusing on our local candidates as well as our national candidates. But we're in charge of Pima County in terms of electing Democrats for the state of Arizona. And so that was obviously our primary focus. Kamala Harris carried Pima County, which that's pretty great. Pima County, as always, or not always, but we a candidate must run the numbers up in Pima County if a national candidate or state candidate, if they expect to get through the Maricopa gauntlet, right? So Ruben Gallego did that. We helped him do that, and it gave him the buffer that helped elect him to the Senate. So we can all be really proud of the work we did here for Ruben Gallego. We flipped an LD17 House seat, which was an epic, really, truly. It was a great race. Kevin Volk worked his butt off, literally. LD17 worked so hard. Kevin Volk literally put holes in his shoes 2 times, canvassing, and LD17 helped him. So we can also be really proud of that. We didn't flip the state legislature, which will have pretty devastating impacts, frankly. But we did our job here in Pima County, and we flipped LD17 House seats. So I'm very proud of that and the work that everyone's done for that. We flipped a county seat, treasurer. Brian Johnson was elected to the treasurer, which is so important. I think that these local elections are basically our insurance against the firewall, the insurance, whatever you want to call it, against national policies. So we rely on people like our treasurer and our county attorney to protect literally our lives and our wealth and our livelihoods and welfare. So that was a really good news. Interestingly, Laura Conover did receive more votes than Harris or Trump. So that's an indication that our down ballot messaging, which we've been working on for years now, got through. And a lot of people, a lot of the voters really did execute that down ballot, more so than the top, frankly. So that I find interesting. I think there's national trends that are just concerning. I know there's like a lot of hot takes about, why we lost at the national level. And I feel like we're definitely in the blame portion of our grieving process. And there seems to be a lot of blame to go around, but I don't think that's very helpful. In fact, I know it's not very helpful. So I try to just focus on trends. And I do think that one trend we saw was um, an ability for the Trump campaign to reach through in digital ways, um, and AI and Twitter, now known as X, and Elon Musk, and there was some definite things going on in the digital landscape that are affecting actually the whole world and elections around the world. That's one big trend. I think the other big trend is there's something going on with young men um, of all backgrounds, frankly. And so I think that the Democratic Party needs to think about that, find smart ways to address that going forward, and speak to these voters. Those are just two big trends. There's like little trends too, but those are big trends. And for the county party, we're still here electing Democrats. That's our job, 200 years in Pima County. And we just had a reorganization meeting, which we have every 2 years. Eric Robbins was reelected as the chair. Tim Cossey from LD 17 was elected as the first vice chair. Hunter Holt from LD 17, he also serves on the Marana School Board, was elected as the second vice chair. Gretchen Winters, who's our current reporting secretary, was reelected. And Andy Flack was elected to the corresponding secretary position, which will be amazingly helpful. So all those positions were filled on Saturday when we had our meetings, the 7th. The meeting went well. These meetings are never easy. There's a lot of, moving parts, especially on Zoom. To Michael Bryan's point, we would love to do hybrid. I think that's a real priority. We have the technical ability now. We've only had it for, a couple weeks now, a month maybe, but we have it. So I'd encourage all of you to, put some pressure on the leadership if you wish to have hybrid reorganization or large meetings, our annual meeting. Most other meetings will probably be held Zoom, but that one I think should be hybrid. We elected 3 people to our executive committee that represent underrepresented or marginalized communities. Cecilia Valdez, who represents the Latina and labor community. Ted Frzelski, who also represents the Mexican American community, as well as labor. And Jeannie Buell, who represents a very rural contingent. So those are really great people. I've worked with all of them for a long time. So I welcome them to our executive board. Yeah, and that's kind of what happened on Saturday and where we're at. The executive director role will be filled. The position is posted online on our website. And if anyone is interested or knows anybody that is interested, please have them look at that. The job description is there. The executive board, which is the small board that we just elected, has the responsibility per the bylaws to hire the executive director in concert or in council with the chair. So that will happen. We'll start to discuss that on Thursday, which is the first small board meeting. We will meet and discuss that. I've been very open about my recommendation based on 2 years of seeing people work in this space and do the work, and some do it, some don't, and hold events and manage their time and manage relationships. And so many of you might know, but I have made the recommendation of Alex Kack to fill this role. And so, that as the director is my responsibility, is to give counsel to the chair and the board. But it's not my decision. I'm not a voting member. So we'll see what happens. But it's obviously very transparent that the job description is online already. And so we'll just go forward as our bylaws tell us to. I just want to say, I think one of the, well, actually, I'll just open it up for questions so you don't have to hear me talk on and on and on.
Give us a brief description of what you think have been your major accomplishments in your term as.
Yes. So I think one of the biggest things was we actually moved our physical space, right? We were at the First Street headquarters for a very long time. That building was in disrepair beyond it was unsafe and unhealthy. We finally moved to a new location that was a heavy lift and a Herculean thing we did. And I think I'm most proud of our physical space that we have here. I think that myself and our other staff member, Mary Ellen Martinez, along with Eric and core volunteers, have worked really hard to professionalize the headquarters space. Now that I'm going to move on, I will, speak kind of, I guess, more honestly, whatever. Our old headquarters had been there a long time, and it had the culture of sort of a clubhouse, right? People would come and drop off their stuff and their junk, and they would hang anything they wanted to on the wall and stay forever. This is very inefficient, and it affected our efficiency in really pretty bad ways, in my opinion. We were also drowning in clutter and stuff that we had collected for years and years and years. So this move was an opportunity to start anew and to professionalize our office space, which is a professional office space where people come to conduct business in a timely manner and leave in a timely manner. And the office needs to stay clean, and the staff and volunteers make the decision in terms of what goes into the office and what goes out and what goes on the wall and all that kind of stuff. And so I am most proud of that. I think that needed to be addressed. And so I'm proud that we operate a professional office space. We rent, which is, good and bad, mostly good. We should not be in the business of maintaining a property. So we don't have a lot of the problems that we used to have. So I think I'm most proud of that. And I think that's a real concrete thing that will help the Pima County Democratic Party after I'm gone and for many cycles going forward. Yeah, that's one thing.
Okay. Well, Susie Anderson has her hand up.
You spoke of the young people, the young men in our country. Do you have any ideas of how we reach them? I have a 22-year-old grandnephew, and he's wholeheartedly Democrat. So, I'm very grateful for that. And most of his friends are. So, but what about the others? And maybe Trey has some ideas too.
Yeah,
enjoy.
I'll give you a short answer, then I would actually love to hear from Trey. I think that the way that young men receive information in our society has changed dramatically. Many young men listen to podcasts. That's why we installed a podcast studio. We could see this trend happening before. We didn't have any idea that we'd have this outcome, but we did see that trend a while ago. There's Joe Rogan, there's YouTube, there's all kinds of YouTube influencers that men and women listen to. But men, I feel like in our country of all backgrounds, especially working class men, are feeling a little left behind and feeling a little lost, and they don't have as much maybe of a place in our society. They don't think they do anyway. I don't think that's true, but that's what they perceive. And so I think we need to speak to them where they're at, and on the platforms that they are on. Young men are not really on Facebook anymore. They're just not there. They're in this podcast space and in this YouTube space that mostly consists of entertainment that
TikTok
that is peppered with politics. And I would like to hear from Trey if I have that right, wrong, or sort of right.
Yeah, yeah, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head. The main way a lot of young men are getting their information is from social media, right? Susie mentioned TikTok. TikTok is a big one. YouTube, those podcasts, right? Joe Rogan. I believe Kamala had the opportunity to go on the Joe Rogan podcast. She turned it down. I think that would have helped her out a lot. But yeah, I think using social media as a tool to connect is definitely going to help moving forward.
Yeah, thanks. I agree.
Okay. Well, Larry, I'm going to go to John Yoakum, and then you're up. Okay. So, John, your hand is up.
Shelly, I know that you're a veteran and proud of it. I don't know if you're a combat veteran, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about our current nominee for Secretary of Defense who wants to blow a thousands wide hole
Yeah, okay.
among combat veterans and
Yeah, so
just
go
take
ahead.
them out of action without
Yeah.
any ideas for replacement of how you would fill that void in American efficiency and defense preparedness.
So I am a combat vet. I spent 2 tours in Iraq. The current nominee for Secretary of Defense is really, really unqualified for so many reasons. Two things I'll say is, like, before I had this job, or the first thing I did is when I left the Army as an officer and became politically active, was integrating women into combat arms. We're working to do that. It was large groups of people that were actively trying to make sure that Obama's executive order placing women into combat branches was successful and that it was carried out. I work primarily with integrating women into U.S. Army Ranger School and in the U.S. Army Infantry. So the fact that this man would blow that all up really, really scares me and makes me want to work on that again. And he's also obviously a sexual predator. So he's just wholly unqualified and dangerous to both men and women serving in the military. Sexual assault happens to men and women in the U.S. military.
The
And
word
we've done,
you're looking for is pervert, and also
yeah,
also blackout drunk.
the U.S. military has worked really, really hard, and not totally successfully, but they've really worked hard and made some really big inroads in combating sexual assault in the ranks. And for this man to be in charge of men and women is reprehensible. And he's obviously, it seems like, has an alcohol problem, and he wouldn't pass any background check that the Pentagon would give anyone.
Okay, well, Larry, you're up, and George, you are next.
Well, Shelly, I wanted to thank you for everything you've done and to celebrate your success.
Thanks, Larry.
Democrats did really well locally.
Mhm.
And we got all of the 6 countywide offices when we flipped the treasurer position. We have a Democratic majority on the supervisors and re-elected Rex Scott, Matt Hines, Jen Allen, and Adelita Grijalva. However, we lost ground in the legislature, so we're actually back a few paces from what we were before the election. And I wanted to get your opinion on the ADLCC, the Arizona Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee. A lot of us feel, including me, that it failed. It's been in existence for since 2015 and has never once given a legislative majority. I know it's not your job, but what's your impression of the job that the ADLCC did?
So, I don't know. I would say I don't know enough about how, their strategy or how they went about their mission to flip the legislature. I do know that without them, we wouldn't be nearly in nearly as good shape. Now, I think that they need to be here, and they need this dedicated resource of money and people and work on the legislature did not exist before. And it exists now and has since 2015. Were there, obviously problems mostly in Phoenix, the greater Phoenix area. But yeah, I think it's unfortunate that they didn't capture the majority and that their work was not wholly successful. But I do think it's like incremental successes perhaps at this point. And my hope is that we will flip the legislature. I work a little bit. I don't work a lot with ADLCC, but enough. I find them all to be super smart and hardworking. And again, I don't know how they went about their work this cycle, but I do think that we need them.
Right. Well, thanks
Okay.
for everything you've accomplished.
Thanks, Larry.
Well, and Larry, you mentioned our new county treasurer who's with us today. So Brian, Let's give Brian a big congratulatory clap here for becoming our treasurer.
Yeah, Brian.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
You're very welcome. Good to see you. Okay, George, you're up.
Hey, George.
You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I had too many pop-ups going on. I don't know what's going on. Hi,
Same.
Shelly. Thank you
Hey.
for your job. Well
Thank
done.
you, George.
I've only known you for a short time, and thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you for your service.
But my question's a little sour, so forgive me.
Okay.
Or not forgive me.
Hit me.
Can you explain to me what your office did for the caucuses, and what role did you play in helping the caucuses help the community in the Democratic Party get them out to vote? And then I'm going to make a comment after that. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Are you talking about the county or like caucuses at our level or the state?
Yeah. Caucuses at our level. Like I'm
Okay.
I'm the secretary for the African American caucus,
Yeah.
and I didn't really see any I didn't see no support from the county is what I'm saying. So
Okay.
if I didn't see any support from the county, then I can guarantee other caucuses did not receive any support from the caucuses. So when we're talking about the election and young people getting information, a lot of minorities think they want to be white. So they're voting to be white. They want to be financially and politically accepted in the white arena in a democratic way. So it is with the whole DEI dismantle that they want to do. This is super important to talk about because there's a lot of miscommunication within the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the caucuses at the local level. I think when Eric became chair the first, not just on Saturday, but the first time, he worked really hard to bring those together. And it was just pretty kind of frankly slow, and we had problems bringing them together. And then we had a city election right away, and then we had this election, which consumed us. But I feel like the beginning was this has been a learning point for Eric. Like we couldn't get the interest and get people going and forming these caucuses. And now he knows that, and knows that this has to happen. He knew it had to happen, but we just got consumed. And I think that without a national or presidential election, it'll be helpful going forward. I think that we definitely need to work on that. I think they were strong. They've been strong at points and not strong at some other points, all different kind of caucuses, right? Like all different ones. And so it's definitely a fair point and something we need to work on going forward. And me and Eric have talked about it, and he's talked about it with the board. So, but it's stuff I appreciate you like mentioning it, because I do think it needs to happen aggressively this cycle. I think that when you talk about the DEI, there's a lot of Democrats. Well, there's a lot of people, Democrats, saying that the Democratic leadership at the national level is abandoning DEI. I don't know if that's true, because I'm not at that level. I can only speak for myself. And for the board and Eric, who I know very well, and the people around us who I know very well are not interested in that. We will go forward, and I think we can do both. I think we can appeal to young men and talk about race and marginalized communities and women and those kind of things in a way that is like equitable, right? I think we can do both. We have to figure out how to do both. We can't abandon our values to win an election. We won't win it, is my opinion.
Well, Brian Johnson has hand up, our Pima County Treasurer-elect.
Yeah, I just was going to make a comment relating to, what George was saying, and also the comments about young men and everything, you have to remember that young men and so on are just as diverse as the rest of our society, and you have to reach them. I think one of my successes in reaching the Latino community was by having friends who were small businessmen who were Latino, and having them post, for example, endorsements for me on their platforms, not on mine, on their social media. And by reaching out to the communities and then having them reach out, and having a diverse group in the different communities reaching out, it really a lot more effective
I agree.
than just trying to think of all young men as the same. They're not. They're not.
Mistake we frequently make with lots of different diverse groups. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay,
100% agree.
okay,
So
so
I have
Mike, Brian has his hand up.
Yeah. First of all, Gail Canamaris had a question in the chat. She wanted which you touched on already, which is the podcast studio, but she wanted to know what you had in the works and what you've done over the last couple of years on social media outreach, and of course the new podcast studio, if you want to talk about that some more. And if you're aware of whatever plans might be in the works there at Pima County to institutionalize that outreach mechanism.
So no, I'll just talk about social media first. We're very active on social media on all platforms except for TikTok. We just don't have the bandwidth we need to. I'd like to abandon, actually. We can only do so much, right? So I feel like there's some interesting things happening on X or Twitter, formerly Twitter, that indicate that big swaths of people are leaving, and big news outlets are leaving, etc. So I would actually, if I had my way, would like to swap that for TikTok. And basically we have the time to devote to 3 platforms, and that's about it. So we're just trying to figure out right now what those 3 platforms are. I think that this is an opportunity where we can change it up, because social media in general is changing all over the map. Facebook is sort of an abandoned space where people still are but aren't. Twitter, again, is just people are leaving in droves. I think that people are done with the old model and want something different. I think a lot of people are also done with mainstream media and our national news outlets. I personally haven't watched the national news on my TV for 5 years. And I don't think that young people do. I'm not young, but I do for other reasons, but like, I don't think that young people do. And so I think our landscape's drastically changing, and there's an opportunity in this chaos to make some real impact. It's just generally what I think about that.
This is actually my first time being here, so it's great to
welcome.
see you, Shelly.
Yeah, welcome.
I'd like to hear more on what you think we can do to flip Congressional District 6, because in 2022 and in 2024, Kirsten did much better than I think anyone expected her to do, and she came very, very close both times. But she ran up the margins in Greenlee County. She ran up the margins in Pima County. What is the next step there? How do we get that over the line?
I think that Juan Ciscomani is a tough candidate to beat. He presents well, talks to everyone, he goes to everything. He goes to things that don't make sense for him, and he talks to everyone. And so I think we should all remember that, and remember that he has a lot of support. Now, I also think he also doesn't have he doesn't have all of the support, right? He has some weaknesses. I think that Kirsten Engel came as close as she's ever come to revealing those weaknesses in terms of his extremism. And I think we just need to keep making people aware of his extreme and kind of anti or militia type views on a lot of things, and white Christian nationalism views on. He's an extreme evangelical Christian with extreme views. And so I think we need to keep informing the public about that. This district is not always been, but for a long time now, is a really back and forth district, right? Seems to just it's hard to hold. It's hard. Good for him. He's going to have to go back and forth, and he's going to fight. He's got to fight like hell to hold it. It's exhausting. So the kind of candidates know that they're smart. They know the landscape. And so I think that that's not helpful in terms of how the candidates we will get for this office. And so I'm hoping that we get a great candidate and who knows this and is willing to fight for this district and do the work. I think that water is hugely important. Kirsten Engel knows a lot about water, and just kind of figuring out how to package that and inform people at a very, 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 very basic level. People don't understand water and water conservation and the laws in Arizona that surround it. And so Paul Cunningham, for example, Tucson Council Member Paul Cunningham, I feel like does a really good job of talking to working class Tucsonans about water. And so any candidate running for that position ought to take his, counsel in terms of how to talk about this subject. I think that Prop 139, because it was a proposition separated from, so there are lots of people that voted for Prop 139 and didn't vote for her and didn't vote for Harris. And didn't, so that's just something that happened as well.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Okay, Trey, welcome again.
Yeah, just to kind of add my input, I'd like to send you or your folks over there some content creators that I think are on the rise for the share of information on the left. Maybe you guys could kind of model your approach after these folks. There's a few of them that I think are definitely they're reaching the people. They're reaching our base, as I guess as a representative of the young men. They're reaching our base. So I think if you guys want to take a look at them, that'd be really helpful. I also want to ask, how are we reaching folks who are in lower income communities? I'm thankful enough, I'm lucky enough to live in a very middle class area, and I have quite frankly access to more information than somebody who is on the more south side of Tucson and in a lower income area. So what steps are we taking, or what steps should we be taking to reach those folks? How could just us as on an individual standpoint do better?
Yep. So I think traditionally our leadership at the chair and the chair level has been affluent. Affluent. It is not. Eric is not what I would describe as affluent. He lives in a part of Tucson that is definitely working class. And so I think that that's very helpful. I think that he actually speaks very well to this issue. He currently works. And so I think that's very helpful. I think that Ruben Gallego, interestingly, really got it right in a lot of ways. He, working people that work really hard all day. I've been one of them. I've been very poor. When they're done with their day, they're pretty exhausted. And so diving into politics is not what they do. They go to soccer games, they go to sports, they go to the casino, they might go to some kind of car fair. Men, I'm talking about women, similar stuff. They don't, that's what they do. And so, Ruben Gallego went to and hosted and had a lot of events that were fun and entertaining. And I think that that's a trend with Joe Rogan and podcasts, and all this stuff is like mixed up in my mind and sort of together at the same time. I think time will sort it out. I don't think there's any really, definitive answers right now, but I will say that you need to meet people where they're at the end of their day. And if you're talking about working class people, it isn't they're not watching CNN at the end of their day. They're exhausted. They're maybe at a bar having a drink. They're at the casino. They're at home watching America's Got Talent, honestly, like watching something to just relieve the hard work that they've just done. So I think that we have to do that. I think that Eric is pretty good at that. He's from there, and that's very helpful. And so Tim Cossey also, he's been very working class. There's some people now on our board that I'm excited to hear from.
So would you say it's more of a case of just making the information a little bit more like palpable for people of those of that demographic?
I think so. It's like a little bit of both, making it a little bit more fun to engage with, and also putting it in the right place. I tried really hard to canvas, table, do anything I could at the casino. Here, and that just because I know that that's where a lot of people here are, and so we didn't have a lot of success with that for other reasons. But there's other places and other things. There's RV shows and car shows and soccer tournaments and all kinds of stuff, and rodeos. Gallego had rodeos. So I just think that needs to be thought about.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Shelly, just to amplify what you said about Ruben Gallego's campaign, all that you said is so true. And if you think about it, he basically had to run against his record, and he was able to do it.
He's a very progressive person, like a very progressive.
Very progressive.
Very.
And he was able to shape his story. And he went to places like the Hispanic rodeo, and he understood that exactly what you were talking about people being, basically paycheck to paycheck, and doing everything they can to survive.
Yeah.
And when these folks looked at what they were dealing with the cost of groceries, compared to 2 years ago or 4 years ago, all the explanations about the economy just fell on deaf ears. Oh, it's the best unemployment we've had. Oh, our trade deficit's down. Oh, we have the best economy in the world. It's people would just shake their head and say, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. And I mean, and we're all here engaged and politically engaged, and but we all know that 95% of the electorate feels like isn't, and they aren't, and they really aren't until the very last minute. And then they barely are, and they make the best decision they can because they're working their butts off. And we're very involved, and so we just need to always remember that the voters are not, and they're we're all working hard, but most people just aren't politically engaged. And so you're right, Joe, when they go to the grocery store, it's significant to them, and it feels dangerous, and it feels scary to pay those prices.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, did you have something?
Yeah, I got a direct message question that very much echoes the topic we've been talking about. I take the direct message to mean that they want to be anonymous, but I don't say anything controversial about this question. She says, what caucuses are present in Pima County, as an initial question? Then how can the PDCP reach out to everyone throughout the year in the spaces and places where they gather and receive information, which I think is important. And I think it's important to take that also with a strategic grain of salt. What are we doing presently? What are we spending money on presently that we should stop spending money on in order to spend money on this sort of outreach instead? Because, we have a budget.
Printing is my honest answer. Printing.
We spent over $100,000 on that. Yeah.
And printing, in my opinion, again, it's much as my opinion, I'm just one person, are no longer effective. Period. Most printing, almost all printing, and that cost a tremendous amount of money, so I think that that's something that we need to shift on, for sure. That's just one small thing.
Yeah. Well, I hope that the incoming leadership will take that that guidance to heart, because I think that's the place where we can cut in order to spend more money and more resources on it.
Yes, Susie, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Shelly, so much. I was wondering about education. I know here in Pima County, we really can't affect how, how to increase money for education. But I do reading seed coach at Monzo Elementary School, and that's a low income area. But boy, those teachers work so hard. How do we get the word out that education for everyone, not just the libertarians, in their voucher paid for schools? How do we work on that? And then what is the role of labor, our labor organizations, in all of this? Anyway.
Yeah, so yeah, I think in Pima County we can all affect public education in Arizona. It's a state thing. So we have direct impact on how we organize our public education. Tom Horn has to go. There has to be a concerted effort to get rid of him. Like a concerted, focused effort. I know that's not a sexy role he fills, but boy, we need like a squad devoted only to eliminating him from that position. This is where, so vouchers, I think, are making a real impression on working people and lower income people. They are starting to figure out, in my opinion, what these really are, and that they really are just coupons for Arizona's most wealthy families to send their kids to private school. They rip money out of our public schools. And they're like ripe with abuse. They're basically just little gifts that our Republican legislature gives their buddies. So, and people are starting to figure it out. People have been through this charter voucher system long enough to know that these schools are these schools are garbage. And that working class people and people at a lower income, they cannot attend these schools because there is no bus system, there is no lunch cafeteria. There is no nurse. There is no playground. They can't get there even if they wanted to go to Basis up in Oro Valley. Basis up in Oro Valley does not attract lower income people. They simply cannot get there. And even if they could get there, they couldn't afford to eat there. So people are figuring this out because the turnover rate is so high in these charters that it's the message is getting through. Now, private schools, they don't even take poor kids. They don't really want the voucher, right? They don't want a poor kid to access this voucher. So that what they do is they raise tuition so that only the very wealthy can achieve that tuition price. In other words, a poor family can't make up the difference of the voucher. And so that is really what they want. They don't want poor people attending their schools. That's not their brand. That's not what they're going for. And so I think people are realizing this. I really do. I think the messaging of SOS and the governor and people working in the space and unions, the Arizona Education Association, have been really, really effective. And those are groups that I think are really effective and continue to be effective. And this is something we should all be working on. People don't want vouchers. We saw it in the last election we had about them, I think the state overturned it. Like, people just don't want this.
But when you said printing, did you mean photocopying?
Yeah.
Because I know that you did a lot for LD20.
We did.
On the voter guides, which
yes,
passed out to an awful lot of people. And nobody, I was over at Ligon's election night for about 3 hours, right before they closed. And 4 to 7 or so. And people were very glad to get it. If I walk up to them and say, would you like a voter guide? And I
agree. So I agree with the voter guides.
Yeah. I wondered where that, I didn't know where you were. I agree with you. People print too darn much stuff.
Yeah.
And
the voter guides,
and nobody says a word about it.
No, especially young people. I mean, they're just not doing it. Voter guides are important. And I think that's probably maybe the only thing that we should print. And really think about the cost of what we're producing, right? mailing those voter guides gets pretty expensive. I think it's dependent also on your legislative district, right? Like how many young people are there? That, you know, are you in a legislative district that is mostly Democrats and you're just working to get out the vote? Then that's different. I want, we do have to print some material, but maybe the Pima County Democratic Party could go into a contract with a large printer and, you know, get it for cheaper and just think hard about kind of what we print, because it is very expensive. The voter guides are only once a year usually, or once every, you know, huge cycle. And so those aren't hugely concerning, but there was so much other stuff.
Yeah, and I don't see it because I'm at LD20 meetings and I don't know what happens over there, except I did have a nice chat with you guys the other day and that was very helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
The other thing I wanted to ask about, and Luminaria, the newsletter, they started an article and they said about Greens voting. And I thought, oh, they're going to finally get to this. Why did Kirsten Engel get so many green votes? Well, they never got to that, which frustrates me with that particular publication because they never quite seem to get to the end. But has anybody been able to investigate that? I know Andrea Kennedy really talked about it a lot last week on DGT, but
yeah,
it's such a strange happening.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I haven't done like enough looking at that. But
I didn't mean you. I meant I don't
yeah.
know what I meant, but
it's interesting. Yeah. You know, the Green Party is always interesting what they do, and yeah, that had a really interesting impact on Engel's race and some others, frankly. But yeah, I don't know.
I don't either, and I don't think it's your problem. It should be somebody's problem.
It should be, and hopefully we'll look up. Yeah, hopefully somebody will look at that.
I'm thinking what we learned in Watergate, follow the money.
Well,
where did she come up with the things that she came up with?
I don't know. Maybe Joe, if you want to sort this out.
Yeah, such a deal. Yeah. DGT on the road.
Yeah.
There we go. That's
there
right.
we go. Okay, let's see. Mike, your hand's up.
Yeah, my DM correspondent would like you to take a step back and explain what are the caucuses at the county level and you know, what role do they play in the party?
So we have had several. They're always different, not always different, but if you go onto our website, they're listed now, but they're not all active. So I don't want to like list them and say what we have, what we don't have, because it's hard to say. As George brought up, what is active and what is not.
What is the function of the caucuses within the party structure?
I mean, my just like opinion or what it is. I don't have it officially in front of me.
You know, yeah, that's really all we're here for.
Okay. I mean, obviously to provide representation and guidance and counsel to the party in terms of the caucus or group of people they're representing.
You know, I've got an interesting thread to ask you, Shelly. You know, I think it's wonderful the county has taken the initiative to have a podcast studio. And have the protocols, how does one access, you know, has that been worked out yet, or is that still in process?
Sorry, okay, I got my hand down. So it's still in process, but I would say just generally, this podcast studio exists for our community. If you are interested in developing a podcast, or if you have technical expertise in the equipment, that's also very helpful. We are interested. You can let us know. We have the studio. You know, we're open to a lot of different uses of this equipment. It is, of course, like secured in our boardroom, and the equipment itself is locked at night, etc. So, but can be used at any time by anybody who's interested and has, you know, obviously an idea that makes sense. But that could be a lot of ideas. So I feel like we're really open to whatever the community wants to use it for.
Great. And the thought I had, how many folks, show of manual hands, listen to a podcast or two?
Only like 100.
Okay. Now, the way I understand podcasts, you basically can listen to it whenever you have time.
Yeah.
It's
So-
not like a TV show.
No.
Yeah, okay.
So
So-
the beautiful thing about a podcast is, and what most people do is they access Spotify, Audible, YouTube, different platforms, and they download the podcast that they want to listen to, or they just listen to it without downloading it, online. And yeah, you could be driving, working. Most young people, and not even myself, I'm not young, but listen to it while completing mundane chores. Dishes, laundry. This is when people usually listen to podcasts or driving. And typically, like, Joe Rogan, for example, let's talk about Joe Rogan, is very entertainment based. There is a little bit of politics in there. I encourage everyone here actually to listen to Joe Rogan. I don't like him, and I don't subscribe to his quote newsletter, or his values, but just the tactical way that he goes about his podcast is important. And I would say when starting a podcast, the Thana Autumn Nation has a podcast called T.O. Young. And, very few people listen to your podcast at first. Joe Rogan, he spent like years, no one listening to it, 100 people, 200. And so just know that too. But the Thana Autumn Nation has one, and it grows every week, with people that listen to it. And so also don't underestimate the niche of what you have to offer. In fact, niche podcasts are even more successful because they don't get drowned out by all the bigger ones.
I have a follow-up question on that. Drilling down on the podcast program a little bit, is the party just now providing the infrastructure to actually record the podcast, or are you helping out in some way with distribution? Because having run a podcast in the past, I know it is not free to distribute that podcast and syndicate that podcast and get advertisers for that podcast, promotion of that podcast, all that stuff costs. How much of that are you assisting podcast makers?
So
hiring
when we actually did, when our interns did actually make a podcast at the University of Arizona studio, or they have a podcasting studio, we published that podcast on Spotify for free. So you can publish on Spotify for free. But we purchased very, very, I wouldn't say very expensive, but pretty expensive software that is used to edit and help to monetize a podcast. So for example, if we did have to pay to put that podcast on a platform that required payment, we would be able to do that.
Susie Anderson has her hands up.
Yes, thank you. Just once more, thank you so much, Shelly. It's been a pleasure to have you. I still wonder about the role of labor. You didn't hear much from unions, from labor, and I'm wondering what's their role. I mean, that used to be the stronghold for the Democratic Party was labor, and where are they? Are they here? Are they with us? What are they doing?
So they're with us. I actually think we heard a lot from them. Maybe would disagree a bit over the cycle. We definitely heard a lot from Sean. His last name is escaping me now, from auto workers. Say that again, Mike.
Sean Fain.
Yeah, Sean Fain. And I think that working class men especially are slowly finding their way back to unions, and unions actually are pretty effective in speaking to young men and young women or working class people. I know here in Pima County, all the unions were very active, canvassing and doing all kinds of stuff, especially the education union. But all of them, we work hand in hand with all the unions here. Like without them, we don't elect Democrats. We just don't, especially here in Pima County. So I think they're just critically important. And I think there's something going on nationally with with unions, I think they're slowly making a comeback. We saw this, the stuff happen with Starbucks, and some young, and with Amazon, young union representation there. I think, it's just interesting what's going on with corporate America. The news recently is well, like horrifying and awful, but there seems to be this thread of, and that I think is like what I'm after, is a way to speak to, we need like we need a strong, charismatic person, we always do, to speak to these issues, in a similar, Joe Rogan does it. There's other people that do it on the right. We've had people that have done it on the left, Cesar Chavez, people that are really reach people in an emotional way. And I think that we should just think about that. I think that the unions in general are a place where that exists. I think that law enforcement is a place where that exists. There's lots of places where that kind of person exists.
Well, thanks so much for that, Shelly, and thanks for all the great work you've done, and I know you'll continue to do in some way or form.
Hey everybody, it's Senator Mark Kelly. As all of you know, Arizona Democrats have had a lot of important wins over the last few years. We won 2 U.S. Senate races, and we delivered Arizona's electoral votes to President Biden and Vice President Harris. We elected Governor Katie Hobbs, Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, and Attorney General Chris Mays. Now, those elections were close, and our victories mattered. Arizona Democrats from the federal to the local level have delivered real results for our state on critical issues like combating climate change, lowering prescription drug costs, protecting the right to vote, and preventing more restrictions on abortion access. The Democrats of Greater Tucson offers the opportunity to hear from elected officials and candidates about that important work and the issues that matter to them. That information will be invaluable as Arizonans head to the polls. So this election cycle, whether you're signing up to knock doors, make phone calls, or joining the Democrats of Greater Tucson to hear from and speak to Democrats in our area, please know that your voice matters and we need you on this team. Thank you.